Hey, welcome to Trap Souls Podcast. I am Ryan. I am here tonight with Ron Yacovetti, an author, and the Digital Séance Experience. If you have no idea what that is, either do I. That's why he's on, so we can figure this out. So, recently I had my first séance. I was a part of it. It was kind of a hodgepodge séance because we're just kind of just messing around a little bit with somebody, and but it was interesting. So I'm sure that you guys are a lot more, I don't want to say strict, but or professional, because the lady's very professional too. I'm not knocking her, but so tell me what digital seance experience is.
Sure. It's the funny part is that we've tried to get a little bit more strict with the process, just because at a lot of times when we would do events, especially public events, we would have instances where the area that could accommodate everybody in the investigation, when you do a public investigation, you'll have, sometimes they'll say they'll have 30, 40 people buy tickets, and then they'll split them up into 3 groups of 10 and cycle them through different areas. Sometimes they cycle them through where we are, which is cool, but sometimes they'll have everybody investigate, and then at the end of the night, or sometimes beginning and end, they'll have everybody congregate in a common area that's large enough to accommodate all 30 people, and then that's where they'll do our digital seance thing. And so initially, and I can explain the history of the process and where the name and everything came from, but initially when we would do the sessions in the common area, that was also the break area. So there were snacks and drinks and stuff. So we would be in the middle of a session with the, trying to call anomalous voices, running the method, and people would be popping open soda cans and ripping open bags of Fritos and stuff. And then I'm not sure I'm hearing anything. Well, yeah, you think? Perhaps give gluttony a pause for a moment and tune in. And that was where the idea came from, to call it a digital seance, which then subsequent to that, of the 5 books I have on Amazon now, number 6 is in the process. Of the 5 books, the third one was called the Digital Séance Initiative, which I came up with, again, titled my third book with, if anywhere else that name Digital Séance Initiative happens to show up, it is clearly a copy or a ripoff of what I came up with. Again, I have a book titled by that. And what it was meant to do was to get people to pay attention. Because we look at that, Lourdes, Gonzalez, and I, who's my partner in this, and we were like, well, how do we get people to not be popping snacks and all that stuff and like tune in? What is there in the paranormal or the history of occult practices that has a more attentive modality in play? And then we figured out, it was the seance. Everybody hands on the table, focused, eyes closed, the whole thing. So we went, that's what we're going to do. So it's similar to a seance, except that the medium is the methodology, hence the calling it a digital seance. But essentially, we're doing something that's akin to a regular seance, just that it's not stuff that is coming through or channeling through a person who's then conveying the imagery or what they see, symbology. It's coming through vocally, and hopefully if there's words and responses, then that stuff is heard and interacted with directly by the people who are attending it. So that's where the whole idea of modeling this around a seance came from. The method itself was derived from something called direct radio voice. Now, for the better part of 20-something years, give or take, the method of ITC, or instrumental transcommunication, that is synonymous with ITC, is like the spirit box or the ghost box, which was born of the Frank Sumption's Frank's box. And that was the only way, really, that people, at least in the States, were doing it. In 2019, due to the fact that I am inept at building and soldering things, but wanted to play a greater role in doing ITC work, I was looking for other things, and I came across the works of a Dr. Annabella Cardoso, who lives in Spain now. She was the first female diplomat to the country of Portugal, where she's from. And she is the last surviving pioneer of EVP and ITC work. And when I say surviving pioneer, I don't mean like TV pioneers. I mean the actual pioneers of vocal phenomenon research. She's the last one left. And everybody who worked on building the shoulders upon which we stand today, those who do ITC, they're all gone. Marcello Bacci in Italy made it most widely known. Konstantin Radove worked with him. Friedrich Jurgensen, who was called the father of direct radio voice. So Dr. Cardoso sat with all these people, and then she mentored me into direct radio voice. And what they did was with DRV, or direct radio voice, was they took white noise from a radio on a vacant channel, no sweeping, just the static, and they were using it for EVP work originally as audio support. And then from that, they got messages that said that they recorded saying that the voices through the burgeoning electronic age would start coming through the radios. And sure enough, that was how it played out. Hence, direct radio voice, or DRV, was born. Now, this existed well before the first sweeping Franks box. And I know in ITC circles, this might not be a popular position or statement to have, but I have it. I don't think the sweeping ghost box modality was a progression. Because when you talk about progress, you're talking about a topological advancement where you have something that builds upon, that builds upon, that builds upon, a continuance of the work based on the previous work. And I think the sweeping box was a divergence. I think it was an offshoot. And it works. I've seen it work. I don't say that it doesn't work. But what the method does and how it works was not at the level of efficacy as direct radio voice. What Marcello Bacci was getting in these little sittings in Grosseto, Italy, was leaps and bounds ahead of anything I'd seen a ghost box do. So in 2019, through the tutelage of Dr. Cardoso, Lourdes and I brought back direct radio voice. And we did that for a period of time. We had worked with other partners for a period of time. A gentleman named Keith Clark from Florida, who goes by Paranormal with a V, paranormal.com, introduced us to the software component of it, which does live filtration. So in the digital seance, what we're doing is we're taking white noise, and then everything people do with audio capture in the paranormal, when they go home, they put it in software, they denoise it, they slow it down, they amplify it, and then they share it. We're doing all those things in real time. Because if you're trying to have dialogue at a location or in a given session, when you go home to review it, there's no dialogue. It's just whatever you recorded, if you got anything. So that's the difference with it. We were the first ones to take live white noise and slow the flow of that down through the software components, because a lot of, again, this is why it's important to know the history and those whose shoulders we stand upon with our own successes. Konstantin Radove, who before, for a little factoid, before EVPs were called EVP, electronic voice phenomena, they used to be called Radove voices. And he had mentioned that these voices not only come in faster than we can detect them, they come in faster than the human vocal tract is capable of speaking. And I had an instance in New Jersey at an event where I recorded what I believe to be my mother with her mother, who passed just before her. And I didn't hear anything except the word on. Later on, I heard my name, Ron, and a whole bunch of other stuff where you can hear it sounds like a female. You can hear it's emphatic. It sounds like Captain Kirk in any Star Trek episode you ever heard. It was just so emotional. And I didn't catch any of that in real time. I found it in review when I slowed the recording down 50%. So on that recording, 50% slow down, I sound intoxicated. I assure you I wasn't. But that's when I realized how fast that voice came in. And Lourdes, by trade, is a court reporter. So she's no longer in the courtroom. They actually work off recordings. So she always says, what I do for the living, I do for the dead, which is transcribe and take down what she hears from recordings. And she said there's no way a human being can talk that fast without stammering, slurring words, bleeding into each other. It's just impossible. And she listens to different dialects, cadences, accents, people talking over each other, further and closer to microphones for her vocation. So her ear is super tuned and she hears a lot. So when she said that, I was like, all right, well, it makes sense. A human being, it could be an auctioneer on cocaine. They can't talk that fast and that clear and enunciate. So then I remembered what the pioneers said, and we worked on a way to figure out how to slow down the flow of the white noise. And still they'll come in, sometimes voices will come in faster than we can hear them, and I'll catch them in review. But the odds or the percentages of what we're able to detect in real time has gone up significantly, where we now are hearing a lot more of what's going on. So to encapsulate and summarize here, we're using analog white noise generators now. We disbanded with using a radio as a source of the white noise. We had done a zinc mine in New Jersey below the surface of the earth where radios, cell phones, and their signals go to die. And we were able to get voices through the white noise. And then we figured out that the RF signal was not necessary to get the voices. And by eliminating it, we would get rid of one of the two cynical, low-hanging pieces of fruit that spirit communication with radios gets dinged for, which is your anomaly that you're looking for is voices. You're using a radio that comes with voices. Yeah. So they look at that like you're going to the beach with a handful of coins and watches, dropping them in the sand, coming back 2 hours later with a metal detector going, look what I found. You made it part of the process. So now we don't have a radio. There's no radio signal involved, no word banks, sound banks. It's not an app. It's analog white noise. A few generators that go into an interface. It channels it into one input. The software component on the computer is a VST, a virtual studio, and it does the denoising and the slowing down. And then from there, you don't really hear anything except some blips perhaps sometimes, and any emergent voices should they happen. So it's as vetted as we could make it to not have it be criticized as, well, you're picking up voices from a radio, which is a legitimate gripe from the cynical people. It is. So we took that off the table.
No, that's 11 minutes in, I'm intrigued already. So, I mean, it's that's cool. So honestly, I mean, it's, I don't know, fate, I guess you want to call it. Cause I was thinking about this last week is why do we have to sweep channels? Because there's a lot of people out there that believe spirit boxes, spirits are manipulating the words from the radio. And I don't think that, because the voices that you're supposed to hear are not even close to radio. What if you actually listen to it, like they're farther away, they're different than a radio, and you're not going to get a word that's going to go over 4 channels. So is it possible to just stay on one channel? Like I use AM all the time.
Yeah.
And not do sweep, and that would do the same thing?
Yeah, I think even the boxes, I think originally we thought this was a version of stochastic or inverse stochastic resonance, but now I don't think so. From a conversation I had, and I'll introduce who and what this is about. I'm part of an ambassadorship group under a gentleman named Dr. Bernardo Castro, who holds 2 PhDs, computer science engineering. He just launched an AI company, has a second PhD in philosophy. And through a conversation in a meeting, talking about stuff that had to do with this and near death, I realized that the idea of the stochastic resonance wasn't coherent, because what it says is that, because since white noise is every frequency a human can hear, 20 hertz to 20,000, if something enters into that and matches one of those frequencies, then they resonate and you get amplitude, more volume, and then our filtration lowers the noise floor, hence the emergent voice that was not otherwise detectable. The problem with that as being stochastic resonance is that would presuppose that the voices that we're getting, or whatever that mentation or signal is coming in, is detectable and measurable and within the range of human hearing. If it's 20 hertz to 20,000, to resonate, it has to be in that range. If it's in that range, then it doesn't need to be bumped up to be detectable where we could hear it. We would already be able to hear it. So what we think what's happening is more of, and this is almost like what I call a technical idealism now. We think it's almost like springboarding, like using it like the same way, like if you wanted to receive VLF, which is very low frequency, they used it for submarines and previously for emergency services. VLF, because of the waves are so large and long that they can propagate through water better, which is why they would use them for submarines. If you have a radio that has long, medium, shortwave, AM, FM, and everything else, but it doesn't have VLF, you can receive VLF if you get a converter. And what it does is it transduces, it'll bump up what it receives in the VLF range so that you can hear it modulated coming out, let's say like 1435 shortwave. So we think that the white noise is doing that. We think that it's helping transduce and modulate what is not a measurable or detectable signal but almost like you say, like a thought form, like mentation, thought, the consciousness that we're tapping into or communicating with. So we think that's how it's working. If that's true, then I would argue that the ghost boxes work off the same principle. And the reason that the sweeping is counterproductive is because if that's true, and I'll explain why I think that's more plausible than the alternative. If that's true, then every time it hits a frequency with the sweep, they're no longer being availed the white noise to transduce or bump up the undetectable signal. The broadcast, even for that millisecond, is what's taking hold, right? So that would be like if you and I were on a phone call and I intermittently kept hitting the mute button and interrupting what was coming through or resonating, through from your side to mine. So that makes more sense to us. And if you look at the ghost boxes, there is a brevity or a shortness to the messages compared to what we see. Even what direct radio voice saw, just using a radio on a vacant shortwave channel, no software or anything else like what we do, they were still longer messages. I think the sweeping truncates or chops off what may be longer communications because of the fact that when it hits the frequencies. Now, again, I don't know. This is what I'm postulating based on our experience in what we're doing and how the voices work and how we develop this digital seance to even produce anomalous voices. What you brought up was music to my ears because I don't hear that questioned enough. I think sometimes with a lot of these long-held beliefs in the paranormal, which are axioms, these are things that you take to be self-evident. You don't question it. It just is. All right. And one of them is that the spirits are manipulating the sound fragments from the sweep and forming words to communicate. We're dealing with sound, so once you're playing in the court of physics, you can't step out of it and go into spiritualism or mysticism because your explanation runs out of steam, right?
Yeah.
So think of that from a perspective of sound, physics of sound. They're taking sound fragments and moving them around at breakneck speeds, like somebody playing Scrabble on cocaine, to put words in place. And in order to do that, if you go, hey, what color is my shirt? And you want the answer blue, those sounds have to be in place at the time to get a timed and relevant response in that moment. Otherwise, they're not there. And if they're not there, then your explanation doesn't hold up for how they're moving things around to form the words. So I think, and plus there's no lag a lot of times, right? A lot of times you'll ask a question doing ITC or even EVP work, and the answer comes out immediately.
Yeah.
There's no time for all that. And it's incoherent from a physics of sound perspective to be moving these little pieces around, these fragments of sound from the sweep. So that's why I think that the transducing from what we think as an explanation makes more sense, because it doesn't seem to come with any inherent flaws like that does. And it explains the length of the messages compared to the ghost boxes as well. But that would be where I completely agree with what you said. I don't think that explanation holds up or makes sense to move the sounds around. I think it was passed down to us from people who were doing this before us and what people maybe thought Frank Sumption believed was going on. But if you think just a couple steps further, it seems to start to lack coherence really fast.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've had people tell me that before. They manipulate the words, and I'm like, it's not Transformers. We're not Bumblebee over here. It's
right. Well, that's part of the problem too, is that science fiction and fantasy stuff has created a culturally manufactured sense of plausibility for things that are not realistically possible.
Yeah.
But we think they are.
So let's get back to your seance then. So pretty much you guys, I mean, is anybody in your group a medium or psychic? Or you guys just use the digital?
That's an interesting question. I'll answer that in two parts. Yes, no for the first part, and yes, no for the second part. Probably the oddest answer you've ever gotten to a question. So Lourdes does not practice mediumship, but she comes from a history in her family of a spiritismo, which is from the Caribbean. She originally hails from Puerto Rico. Her family, it gets sometimes confused with Santeria or stuff like that. So she's not a practicing medium, but she has at times outperformed the digital seance with coming forward with information for somebody's question in the room by intuiting it or seeing something, symbolically or image wise. So it's not something she practices, but I do think she possesses the ability to do so. And other people who've gotten to know her, like John Zaffis from The Haunted Collector, who we're very close with, has outright told her, we need to talk about your mediumship stuff. Like they know, like they can see it in her. That said, she's more comfortable. She had a traumatic experience when she was younger, watching something happen through a family gathering in Santeria that involved her mom. So she shied away from it for a while. She's more comfortable with the mediumship of the digital seance or TDSE than she is getting into that, though she is a little bit curious lately about maybe stepping a little bit in that territory. So the other half of my answer to that question is that we love working with mediums who are genuine and doing this, because what we've had happen a lot of times is we've had they'll intuit or say stuff. And then this is why it's important that I pointed out that our system doesn't have a microphone or RF signal, so there's no way to influence it. Like you could, like people fear like mobile apps. If you say the word, and the mobile app might be able to pick what you're saying and then answer you or spit the word back out, whatever. So we don't have that risk with what we're doing. So when mediums read stuff and cull certain information from the sitters or people in the room, and then we get the same or stuff that's in sync with it, and it's all part of a bigger picture for somebody there, it's corroboration for both parts, and it works amazingly well for us, and it works incredibly well validation wise for the medium. So we do enjoy doing that. We've done this with Scott Davis, Cindy Kaza, Richard Michella, just to name a few, Sam Beltrusis, Patty Negri. And a lot of times, I'll be honest, when somebody like those people are in the room, to me, a lot of times it seems like we get more. Like we get more interaction, and sometimes it'll include a lot of their name being called out or inserted into the dialogue, besides who else may be there for the, especially if it's like a public sitting.
Yeah. I mean, from my understanding, it's like with mediums and psychics, they're, some spirits shy away because they're like, oh, they can hear me. But you have someone like Cindy there that, I mean, everybody knows who Cindy is. I'm sure the spirits do too. So maybe they're more comfortable, so they come out more. I don't know. I'm not a psychic or medium, so.
Yeah, no, me either. Cindy's fantastic. We worked with her in the UK for the first time in 2024 at Festival of the Unexplained, and then the other gentleman, Scott Davis, who was, I think he was just on an episode of Monster Quest. He had a show. There's a few episodes, I think 3 episodes on YouTube called Phantom Forensics. He did with Dale and Spratt from Ghost Brothers. Those two especially had nailed a lot of very personal stuff from Lourdes's family that is not Google friendly to find. And to be quite honest, that I didn't even know. And I've been with her for about 10 years and I didn't even know. And I was like, we need to talk. If there's some other stuff going on, we need to write some stuff down. So they really, really impressed us, especially impressed upon her with stuff that they were able to put, to pull forward and say. That's another thing I think that people are cynical or skeptical of, because there are instances where hoaxes and frauds have permeated the landscape. That does sometimes seem, when this stuff becomes popular, to all of a sudden be an influx of everybody's a medium. And then what happens is I think that it gets diluted. And there are people out there who we've seen who genuinely seem to be able to do this. The other thing that's important, and we can get more into this a little bit after we, I guess, go over whatever you want to ask about the digital seance itself. But this is why metaphysical stance, position, what one believes nature or reality to be, is important. Because there are, just in the works of someone like Dean Radin, psi phenomena studies that have been done in labs, where well above chance odds for a variety of different things, for telepathy, clairvoyance, clairaudience, remote viewing. A lot of these things have, through rigorous testing by someone like him and who he works with, and he's a PhD scientist. He's done this in lab settings. He worked on, I think, the Stargate project that was government run. So to dismiss this as just some kind of cultural hokum, I think, is naive. To doubt it or be skeptical, that's fine. If you need to see or experience it for yourself to get over that hump, you're talking about a belief thing, that's fine. But to deny it and to deny the data and stuff that exists out there in support of this, no. So that's why I think, and this is why when we talk, we don't just do digital seances and we don't just put forth anomalous voices. We speak extensively on metaphysical philosophy, or what's called metaphysical idealism or analytic idealism under Dr. Bernardo Kastrup, who I've studied the works of, and now I meet with as an ambassador with him for at least the last year now, which is a study of beingness, an ontological perspective. The paranormal field, I think, again, this is, I guess maybe this would be an axiom or something that's existed for a while. When you hear metaphysics, people think crystals and incense and, and sage and candles. Those have practical application within a metaphysical framework, let's say. But metaphysics does not mean that. It literally means that which stands behind the physics, right? Science tells us what nature and reality does. It models and predicts behaviors. It asks questions of nature. Through experimentation, you get outcomes and answers, but it doesn't tell us what nature and reality is. That's a metaphysical position. That's philosophical. Will we ever know that for sure and pin it down? Probably not. But not knowing one's position would have most people default to what is the reigning worldview, which is what we were all raised in and taught in school, which is what's called physicalism or materialism, was the older name for it, which says that there's fundamentally, in reality, one thing. It's physical stuff, doesn't have any qualities. It exists exhaustively in numbers and measurements. And then anything that's qualitative, like the tastes and smells and feeling, that's all here because your brain, which is physical, creates consciousness, which is through which we experience everything through consciousness, is created here by the squishy little wet brain in your head. That's physicalism. There's no qualities out there. Idealism or analytic idealism, as we put it forth, says that reality is not physical. It's fundamentally mental. Subjectivity, consciousness is the foundation for reality. It is nature's one true given. We know we're conscious, and everything through consciousness is how we know it. Directly or indirectly through acquaintance is through being conscious. If something exists outside of consciousness, it may as well not exist for us because we have no access to it. So under idealism, what's physical and solid to us in our world is just how it appears to us in its representation, but it's not fundamentally physical. This jives with quantum physics for at least, I think, the last 40, 50 years, which says that physicality is the result of observation and measurement. Things don't have physical parameters that when you measure, they reveal them. That's why you can have things like entanglement and have two particles. If you spin one way on the same axis, it spins the other way somewhere else. It could be a million miles away. That's why, because they're not actually little discrete marbles. They are representations of something that's out there, but that's not fundamentally physical. Why does all that matter? Because of the metaphysical framework and how you view reality not only biases how you approach or look at these things or try to solve these paranormal questions or problems, it also designates or denotes what's acceptable, right? Like we've all heard, extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof or evidence. It was, I think, it may have been Immanuel Kant that first said it, I think, but I know it was made famous from Carl Sagan. They call it the Sagan standard. Right? What is it? Like anything fantastical, extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof or evidence. But that's only true if by something being termed extraordinary is because it doesn't fit into a belief system that says it's not possible, which is dogma, which is ideology, which is a set of beliefs that exist. And then this stuff that you experienced, if it doesn't fit in here, well, you better have a pretty good grandiose explanation to get it in here, because this is reality here, and it says that stuff is BS and can't happen. right? So that's why. So it's only true if it's termed extraordinary because it doesn't fit into a belief system. That's why somebody's metaphysical position or what they believe reality to be is important. Because if reality is fundamentally mental, then telepathy, clairvoyance, remote viewing, things that have been documented, and anecdotally, but to an extent that it can't be ignored. It can't be ignored. It's very easy and tempting to ignore it and go, well, it's not supposed to happen. But at the amount and the amount of data, not just documented, but the amount of correlation and things that line up consistently through all the data, you can't just dismiss it as anecdotal or subjective. Everything we experience is subjective. Even when you use an instrument, you have to still, through your own senses, process it the same way. So everything's subjective. Yeah. So that's why metaphysics or a metaphysical position is important, because it's what says that this paranormal stuff is not real and it doesn't fit into what the worldview is. So hence, you better have some grand proving explanation or it doesn't cut it. And science doesn't prove either, by the way. Math proves. Science leans into what's most probable, what's most reasonable, what's most logical, based on factors that we're aware of and able to know. It doesn't prove. If science absolutely proves something beyond a shadow of a doubt, then it would be in conflict with its own mantra, which is to always update and revise and reapproach things in the face of new data, new discovery, new information. It wouldn't be able to do that. So it can't prove, but it gives us regular stuff, or it gives us what we call laws, which are regularities in nature that you can count on. Every time you pick up a pen and let it go, it's going to fall down. So we can rely on it. It's reliable information, but we call it laws because we have enough of a confidence in that that's a recurring thing. So that, again, just to kind of bring it all back, that's why metaphysics or a metaphysical belief in what nature or reality is important, because it sets the groundwork for what the belief system is. And then the people who don't believe or argue against the reality or legitimacy of what we call paranormal say so because it doesn't fit into that box. But the theory must fit the facts, not the other way around.
Yeah. I mean, majority of people fear the unknown. I mean, that's pretty much what you're getting at, I believe. I mean, you went on like 20 minutes. I was trying to follow everything, but you threw a lot of stuff out there. But yeah, I mean, if we don't, majority of people that don't, like you said, science, if it's not proven, then it can't be.
Right.
Which is BS. But again,
right. Science doesn't prove. Right. Math proves.
Yeah. So I mean, my old slogan was "Don't fear the unknown." That's what I always told my group: don't fear the unknown, because you shouldn't fear it just because it's not known. And just like paranormal, every little bump in the night should not scare you. It could just be a nice spirit. You know, I mean, you do seances. There's every spirit that comes through, bad? No. So you threw a lot. I can see why you write books. I mean, I'm gonna tell you that right now. You have a lot going on in that head of yours, man.
I appreciate it. Look, it's our game has changed over the last couple of years since I got involved with the metaphysical philosophy with Dr. Bernardo Kastrup, and I attend these meetings every week, and I listen to him talk, and then people he brings in are some of the leading neuroscientists, and I listen to them, and I go every week. I go, did I even graduate? Like, it's unbelievable, but it's so important because here I'll give you a really easy way to kind of digest why all that stuff that I rattled through is important. And by all means, like if something doesn't make sense, or if you don't know what something means, like I look things up constantly because I am constantly exposing myself to people who are way smarter than me, who have a vocabulary 100 times bigger than mine. But when they use terms and explain something, and I know the context, but I don't know what the hell that word was, I go find out. And I think our field needs that. But if this makes it easy to really understand like why that has been such an area of heavy emphasis for us now, despite these voices, just an ITC alone, with people who built boxes for 20 something years, everybody who's out there now doing any version of ITC with white noise or otherwise, right? We have, for the longest time, you've probably got recordings, you've heard people who do, put forth incredible, and I'm not talking about the ones that people go, this is great, and you go, I don't even understand that. Not like the substandard stuff, like good stuff. It exists. And we've been putting it out there, even photo evidence. We've been doing it for years. And we keep going, here's proof, here's proof. Listen to that voice. Here's more proof. You want to see proof of the ghost, proof of the paranormal? Here's proof, here's proof. And we don't get anywhere. We're still arguing for the validity of this stuff in 2026. Why? Because what we're doing, metaphorically speaking, is we're taking all the stuff we're putting out there. We have an 8-inch diameter ball of our evidence, and we're throwing it out at a 4-inch diameter hole. And we can't figure out why what we're putting out there isn't getting through. We have to do stuff to inform and influence the out there that we're putting our stuff in order for it to be seen in a different light and given a fair shake and evaluated in a way that makes sense to, yes, get rid of the stuff you can, examine the stuff that's worthy of examining. But that whole metaphysical thing that I went off on a whole tangent on, that's why that's important.
Yeah.
Because a physicalist metaphysics, it says that reality is fundamentally physical stuff. And your brain creates consciousness, which is something physical creating it. That mindset is what says that this stuff isn't real, that it's paranormal, that it's supernatural. But under a different metaphysics, which we call, or we put forward, called analytic idealism, if reality is fundamentally thought, mentation, consciousness is the basis, the foundation, then all these things that we're experiencing are not supernatural, they're natural. They're not paranormal, they're normal. It's nature doing what it does. And then it doesn't need a grand explanation. It just needs an explanation that's coherent, that makes sense. One of the problems that I see in the paranormal field these days is that in trying to get over that 4-inch hole, 8-inch ball we're trying to shove through it, people are invoking science for everything. And they're jumping into quantum field theory and quantum science and string theory and all these different things. But then as the explanation moves forward, then they're conflicting with the very science that they're putting forward to support something at the same time. Science is absolutely important. It is a vital tool. But our culture today, because of all the fancy whiz tech toys and everything we have, is worshiping the neo-priesthood of science. And we think it's not only the last word, that it's really the only word. And we need to prove this with science. No, it's not the only thing out there. There are things to learn through theology and religion, spirituality, metaphysics, philosophy. There's more than one tool that we have access to learn and try to figure this stuff out. Science is but one tool, a good one, but it is but one tool. You could always hammer in a nail with the butt end of a screwdriver, but wouldn't it make sense to use the hammer instead, right? Right tool for the right circumstance. That's why this stuff is important, because there's a lot of good work getting done. And the reason we're still spinning in place with a lot of this and not gaining any ground, and then there's skeptic and debunking communities and stuff, the reason we're hitting that wall is because we haven't changed our approach. And what we need to do is influence and inform a different metaphysical position. A lot of scientists, a lot of neuroscientists, a lot of people are now moving towards more of an idealism-based metaphysics, or defining what reality is. That's the foundation. We can explain everything from consciousness, but it is the one thing we can't reduce to anything else, because if it's outside of that, we wouldn't know it. So that's why that stuff is so important to us, and we're trying to share that.
A couple of things.
Mm-hmm.
One, I appreciate you because you're expanding and open to learning in the paranormal. There's so many people out there that it's this way and this way only.
Yeah,
and that's what's hurting. Since I started doing these podcasts a year and a half ago, my mind has opened up so much just from talking to people like you. And again, we talked about the rabbit hole before we came on. that rabbit hole is huge. Like
Hmm.
we're going to keep going down it. Second of all, do you think we'll ever get away from paranormal into the normal? You think that's even possible?
Well, so I'm going to answer the question as asked the way it came across. I think we're already there. I think it's what is it? The Emperor's New Clothes with the being, or even Adam and Eve. Or Adam and Eve were in the Garden of Eden naked, and until the eating from the tree, the fruit of the tree of wisdom, whatever. Then all of a sudden, oh, we're naked, and it's an embarrassment and shame. And so I think we're there, and I think there is a shift moving in that direction, where there are a lot of people in the sciences who are on board with that this physicalist worldview, that things are fundamentally physical, which doesn't allow for this stuff, is not quite right. So I think we're moving that way, but I don't think it hasn't taken hold. When you talk about shifting a paradigm, which I gets mentioned sometimes in the paranormal, it's a lengthy process. It happens with generations dying off, newer, open-minded thinking people coming forward, introduction of new ideas. One has to supplant or replace another paradigm or belief system in order for it to take root, and it doesn't happen like that. It'll take a while, but I think there is at least a shift going in that direction. Things that have come out of philosophy, things that have come out of actual physical science, that are moving in that direction, quantum field theory, things like that, I think are moving us in that way. So I don't think the realization has taken hold, but I think there are a lot of people who are seeing things different. And this is why we spend so much time on this, even when we do talks. It changed our whole approach. It changed our life. When Lourdes first heard Dr. Bernardo Kastrup talk, she said he explained my life to me because she had experiences since she was little. It changed our whole approach. I have since, in the books, and I had done one on an academic essay that was on academia.edu in 2024. It was like top 5% for a few weeks. I've challenged a lot of long held theories in the paranormal. And funny, in some instances, a couple of instances, I and Lourdes had to come in and kind of like just like explain. I had been pegged for a skeptic because of that, and I keep saying, I try to be very explicit. I'm not denying the experiences, but what I'm saying is that the way we're explaining them doesn't hold up. It doesn't make sense, or it's jumping around into all these different metaphysical beliefs which conflict, or we're saying science explains this, and then we're conflicting with that very science 2 steps later in the same theory. So that's why it has so much value to us. But yeah, I had been pegged as being a skeptic for that. I challenged, and there's still people out there. It's again shifting a paradigm even within the paranormal when people held on to things. Stone tape theory. The current explanation for stone tape theory makes no sense. It falls apart in a few different ways. I've lectured on it, but there are still people who will still hold on to and lecture on and stick to the original explanation. Now, I'm not saying I figured it out, but what I'm saying is that the explanation that's circulated for a number of years doesn't hold up. And at least what I'm saying is more coherent and what's called skeptically parsimonious, meaning that it's efficient. When you explain something, especially something phenomenological, the fewest steps as possible without inventing things that you just invent because you need it in your explanation, like portals and other dimensions and stuff that we don't have access to. Could they exist? Yeah. But when we put them into explanations because we need it at the time, that's not really lending us any value in trying to explain these things. So stone tape theory, do I think the experience happens? What we call that? Yes. Does the explanation hold up? I say no. It shares a foundation with psychometry, which I also think happens, but falls apart for the same reason. And I actually put together a 10 video course also that's on our website, which I also took on the idea not just of stone tape and psychometry, but I argue that there is no such thing as a residual haunting, because of the same thing that takes down stone tape and psychometry in their current explanations but again, I'm not saying they don't happen, is the same thing that residual haunting relies upon as an explanation. So I argue that all three of those things happen, but the explanations don't cut it.
Yeah, I mean, like you talk about portals. I am so sick of portals. Like, I go back to the same places a lot, and you go there, and there's 6 portals. Next time you go back, there's 13 portals. Like,
Right.
where the hell these portals come from? It's coming from, like you said, there are psychic and mediums out there that are legit. I believe 99% aren't, and they're watering down the people that are real. So I think people that are going in there saying they're psychic medium. Do I
Right.
think some of them believe they are? Yes, I think they believe they are, but I believe they have a good imagination. And one person says it. There's 13 portals here. Next thing you know, there's 13 portals there.
Yeah. No, you're some of the things that you're saying and then putting into a question after you say it. I'm smiling on the inside as much as I am on the outside, because I think that's part of the problem. And a lot of times, even when you do public events, the celebrities, the people that the audiences and the attendees know from TV shows, are putting forth those same ideas that don't have support, but they've just been in the field so long, it's like they have tenure. So they just get, like you said, there's a portal over there under the stair. Well, okay. So here's an important thing. We have a mindset with this stuff, especially with that whole proving stuff that we get thrown with, right? We have a mindset which is, I would describe as ambivalent, meaning it's yes or no, it's true or false. There's something called the law of excluded middle, which says that it can be true or it can be false, but it can't be neither or both. So that's part of the problem, because people go, there's a portal there under the stairs, and that's where spirits are coming in and out. And you go, all right, well, I don't believe it. I say it's not true. And they go, you prove it's not true. You can't. So then it's true. Or you can't prove it's true. And they go, then it's false. No, this is not Little League baseball where if one team doesn't score enough, the other one wins. No. And the skeptics do the same thing. They go, the person making the claim, the responsibility lies on the person making the claim. That's a popular thing with skeptics. I don't disagree with that. Where I have a problem with that is with the consistency and the continuance of that thought. Because if there's an anomaly or something that happens, and the paranormalist goes, it was a ghost. And then the skeptic goes, no, it wasn't. And they go, you have the onus of responsibility because you say it's a ghost to prove it. Which again, science doesn't prove. All right, I can't prove it. And they go, well, then it's false. I go, well, hold on. Well, what about you? And they go, the person making the claim has the responsibility. But there's only 3 positions that one can take with regards to assessing what is alleged to be an anomalous thing, right?
Yeah.
It's paranormal, it's not paranormal, and I don't know. That's it. There's only 3 positions. If there's another one I'm missing, point it out, but I think that's all there is. If you're saying, as the skeptic, no, it's not, that's a claim. And just because I can't prove it is, as the paranormalist, doesn't mean, again, Little League baseball, that the person who thinks it's not wins because I didn't prove it. So then it's not. No. You have a claim also. So I don't disagree with that mantra that they have. But what I think is that why don't they continue it and self-apply and go, all right, I'm also making a claim. It's not paranormal. Now, I also share a responsibility to make my case. And they don't. Because when you fail to prove it, which you can't, then they go, you lose. It's not paranormal. Well, it's at least anomalous because I can't explain it and neither can you. That's part of the problem, again, with the mindset. And then the metaphysical framework factors into that also. But we have to stop looking at it that way. That if you can't prove it, if you say to me, I just saw a ghost walk behind you. And I go, oh yeah, I don't believe you. Prove it. You go, well, I can't, but I saw it. I'm not lying. I'm being honest. I saw a spirit walk behind you. Why don't we do that with anything else? Why don't you go, you know what, Ron, I'm hungry. And I go, I don't believe you. Prove it. Show me your hunger. You can't. Doesn't mean it didn't happen, right? Doesn't mean it didn't happen. To misconstrue an experience is not to say that somebody doesn't have one. So again, a lot of what we're subjected to, a lot of it is our own fault because we keep playing hockey on a football field with the wrong equipment and can't figure out why we're not scoring. The game is wrong. And it starts at a metaphysical level because when you don't know your metaphysical stance, or if you have one like physicalism, then that's going to make unexamined assumptions. You're going to have biases and things you're going to believe and operate off of just based on that. And so then you're excluding things right off the bat. It's a lot. It's a lot. But again, I think that's why we have been so changed by the metaphysical philosophy and why we put more emphasis a lot of times on that than the voices, because the voices are phenomenal. When they answer us, Lourdes will come down and late at night if I'm sitting there tinkering with it and I'm running it, and a voice will say, "Hi, Lourdes," when she walks in the room. That's phenomenal. And we're like, oh, cool. Like, it's so cool. But if we're looking to make any kind of an impact or any kind of a difference with this, and not for self-aggrandizing purposes, just so we can become, no, this is, we're all, this is a unified front for all of us. And if anybody wants to contribute to the greater cause, then we have to look at changing the approach and the framing of what we're doing. And as long as we let the opposition frame it in a way that says this stuff doesn't happen because these are the rules, that's an ideology. Science is a method of inquiry. It's not an ideology. And you can't exclude and frame everything with physics alone. It's not the only science out there. It's a big thing. We look at science like it's the end all be all, and everybody in the paranormal is clamoring to use it now. But what I think what they miss, any method of gaining knowledge, any means of gaining wisdom or knowledge that we have, one of the things it gains a lot of its strength from are its limitations. What science can't speak to, what science can't talk to and reach, are where it gets its strengths. Because if somebody's doing something outside of that, then they're not doing science. It doesn't define what science is. So it has limitations. We're trying to make everything cram in under science. But there are other things, and then we make, based on that, we make unexamined assumptions, and we think, oh, you know, you do something at an investigation and something happens, they go, well, for that to be true, you have to bring it into a lab, and we have to be able to recreate it a couple times. That assumes that we know everything behind the phenomena. And most times, if not all times, we don't. If you're at an investigation and something happens and it's like, whoa, and people see something or experience something, when you move it and put it somewhere else to recreate it, you're biasing the experiment because you don't know everything that's contributing to it. So when you move it, you bias it. Putting it in a lab is for having control, having more rigorous procedures, and being able to rule out false positives, EMF contamination, etc. So it's not without reason. But when you take something like phenomenological like this and you move it to a lab, you bias it because we don't know if everything that's causing it is something that spans miles, bodies of water and electrical thing from far distance. We don't know. The assumption is, of course, you can do it in a lab because we think that everything starts microscopic and then goes big macroscopic. So it'll fit in a lab, but we don't know that. So again, there's a lot behind this, but this is why I think this stuff is really important.
I mean, I think what you do is important. I think what other investigators, but you bring in the science and everything. I know it's not all science, but bringing the more, I guess, philosophical approach to it compared to a lot of the groups out there that are just going out there to whatever the reason is for doing it, you know, the know what's afterlife or help spirits move on, whatever they believe in. But you gotta be willing to grow also.
Yeah.
And if we're not growing, then we're just stuck. And we'll never get past where we're at right now. But with you doing what you're doing in Lourdes and everybody else that you're talking about, I think you're bringing it to more of a center stage, I guess you want to call it, where, yeah, we're moving closer, I guess, to have people believe. I mean, there's always going to be non-believers out there. I mean,
Of course.
there's non-believers in religion. There's
Yeah,
non-believers
right.
in everything we do.
Right. There are
So,
people, if Bigfoot handed them their car keys, they still wouldn't believe in them
yeah,
because it's just not. Yeah, and then I get it. There's some people are the seeing is believing. They need show me something, hand me something. It's called material chauvinism. Like they have to have something tangible to hold on to. And not necessarily so. Again, if you said you're hungry, nobody would ask you to prove it by handing them something tangible.
right.
So it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It's just
Oh,
some things are not quantifiable or measurable, but it doesn't mean that they don't exist. That's part of the problem. And that's part of what factors into when I picked apart explanation for stone tape psychometry and residual hauntings. Again, not saying they don't happen. I'm saying the way we explain those experiences is flawed. That's part of where that comes from, is that it requires to be able to quantify or measure things that we cannot in order to support the current explanations. So we invoke science and the physics of science, or physics specifically, and then we can't use it at the same time. And philosophy and science should govern each other. That's important too. Like I don't have all the answers. I just what we've been taught under Dr. Castrop at Idealism is that if you have hypotheses and theories that conflict or clash with known regularities in nature that are called laws of science or things that science knows or appears to know, then you don't have good hypotheses and theories, because those things are not to be thrown out just because they don't fit with your explanation. But by the same token, you can't deny experience. You can't have the whole recreation of when back in the day when the religious zealots wouldn't look through Galileo's telescope. They refused to acknowledge what it was he saw, right? We can't do that either.
all right. There's a question. I'll pop up on the screen. It's pretty long, but I may ask this.
You think it's people's fear of their own immortality that makes them push for the science behind the paranormal investigating? Would they be justified in being able to recreate it? That's a really good question. So I can't speak to this on a every person level, because that might be true for some people. But I would say if I had to, I just opened it up so I can see the comments too, because I didn't realize. If I had to lean on a more general explanation, I think that would fit across the boards more. I would say that it's not for fear of their immortality, though that may be a factor in their thought processes. I think in the paranormal field, I honestly think it's a grab at credibility and validity, because we've been fighting this fight so long. And when you see things, that you see through like quantum entanglement and quantum tunneling and some of the things that come with advances in science, people are seeing that as opportunities to support and explain these phenomena that they know happen, that they believe happen. But when you don't have a handle, again, I keep coming back to it. If you don't have a handle on what your metaphysical stance is, which is what you think reality or nature is, and it's not that we're going to ever know that, but if you don't have an idea what you think, then you're either going to default to physicalism or materialism, or you're going to conflict with your own theory as you develop it, your own hypothesis as you develop it. That's the danger of not knowing it. But I think honestly, it has a lot to do with just that we want to be taken seriously. We want to be taken credible. When somebody has an experience and then someone tells them that it's not true, that it's a hallucination, the metaphysical position has everything to do with framing it. If your squishy brain in your head creates consciousness and the world is fundamentally physical stuff with no qualities, no taste of chocolate, no smell of strawberry, nothing. It's just physical hard stuff with measurements. And then everything that's a quality that you experience, and everything we experience with quality, right? If you hand me 100-pound dumbbell, I don't experience the number 100. I experience heavy. It's an experience. Everything we experience is a quality, is qualitative, or what they call qualia. So if everything that's quality or qualia, right, qualitative experiences are happening here, because your brain creates consciousness in your head and none of that's out there, then everything we see, every person, every place, everything is a hallucination, because they're all products of your mind. Your mind's creating it. They're not objectively out there in the world. But physicalism and people who believe in materialism will say that there is an objective truth out there. What is? The world is. And we believe there's a world out there also. But if there's no qualities out there and they're here, then everything we see, taste, touch, smell, experience, everything is a hallucination, which is one of the ways that what we experience gets dismissed. It's just a hallucination. The experience of a hallucination is still an experience. So that doesn't dismiss it either. By somebody saying that to us, they are conflicting and contradicting their own point as soon as they say it. So I think to circle back to the shorter answer, I think that, well, for some people, it might be something to do with a fear of their immortality or their mortality. I think in large part, the field is seeing an opportunity to validate and support and legitimize, and not for wrong reasons, what it is that we all do. And they're seeing opportunities with new ideas and new things in science to do it. But then there's a lot of things that I think get misapplied or not coherently thought out, because we're just wielding the science without understanding the metaphysics that goes with some of the ideas, or what's implied or necessary to say that this is happening. You could frame it differently and still have the experience, but not have the same causal properties, the same reasons and causes behind the phenomena, just based on how you frame it, if that makes sense. It's deep. It's a lot to take in. It's a lot to I didn't come to this mindset overnight. It took me years of studying this guy's work and then reading other people, again, some of the neuroscientists, philosophers like Alan Watts, to reshape and look at this stuff differently, but in a way, at least to me, that makes sense. That at least makes sense and doesn't conflict with science.
You have your comments up now, I guess. So you see that next question?
So Tower Paranormal, great guy, great group. Todd from 222 Paranormal, Todd and his wife Carmela, great people also that we know from the paranormal field. What are your thoughts on the Philip experiment? Oh, in the 1970s, what you're saying. So that's really, what book was it? I think my fourth book, which is Paranormalization, Memoirs of an Academic Layperson. I think that's the book. It wasn't before that, I don't think. So I wrote specifically about the Philip experiment, and I'll tell you why. So let me take it a step back. I don't think we create reality in an objective sense. Like, I think there is a world out there, and if you were in my house now looking at this room, you would experience the table as the same color, the walls and the color of the paint the same color as me. So I do think there's a world out there that has qualities and states to it that we can observe through our sensory input. I do think that's true, based on the fact that we would have commonalities if we observed the same room. So I don't think we create reality. What we do is we shape our own narrative or myth of reality. Everything we interpret comes with narrative. Everything we interpret comes with narrative. And again, if one's metaphysical position is a certain way or not known to us, that can skew or direct the narrative in what we perceive and then interpret to ourselves as what we are taking in. So that's why that's important. The Philip experiment. So two things. When the Philip experiment was brought to my attention at one point, it was brought because of the idea of people who don't know. I think there were a few different sessions and stuff over a period of time. It was engineers and PhDs, a group, master's degrees people. I think I forgot. There was a variety of highly educated, smart people. It was in Canada. I believe it was in the 70s. And they did sittings where they were creating a ghost. They were manifesting a ghost, like through thought forms. And they named him Philip, and they were creating this whole narrative and the storyline. So when it first came to my attention, the one thing I wanted to point out immediately, because of what we do for our digital seance, is that nowhere in the Philip experiment were anomalous voices recorded or attempted to be recorded. That's important. So as far as anything to do with EVP or ITC work, there is no correlation that can be used to support or denounce voice phenomena in any way based on the Philip experiment, because they didn't do it. The other thing is to me, the Philip experiment makes the very argument that a lot of people in the paranormal would love to hang their hat on, which is some of us have varying degrees of education. There's people in the paranormal field who have PhDs. There are people in the paranormal field who have masters. There are people who have just high school education, or they have vocational trades or whatever. And a lot of them in all those categories, people that I've met, are brilliant. Our friends here, Tower Paranormal, Todd and Carmela, these are very smart people, very good, detailed investigators. Now, we don't get the same validity as somebody with an engineering degree or a PhD or a master's, because there's educational value in having an accredited university in that level of achievement. I don't disagree with that either. But we can still learn and speak to things in a very highly educated layperson's way, learning from those people who make that information available to us. They hide that knowledge in books, believe it or not, and we have access to it. So I don't think that the schism between the lay people and the highly educated people needs to be as cavernous and large as it may seem to be, or as it may be labeled to be by people who are cynical. Go, well, there's no scientists involved in what you're doing. It's not at a university. So here's the perfect example of it. It was just the Philip experiment. All these people, so they have this one big moment, and they're in a theater, and they themed it like a seance, and they have the dim lights and the mood lighting and the table, I think, on the stage and stuff. And supposedly, I don't remember the exact details, I think they had gotten levitations to happen. The communications was like knocking, like yes, no kind of stuff, similar to the Fox sisters, similar to what Cody and Satori do, that some people love and some people don't even believe. It's called telegraphy, right? It's using the knocks for how many knocks for a certain letter or whatever. So they had that, but there was also some stuff, phenomena supposedly, that they did with stuff like tables or something levitating. So I thought, wow, the fact that they created phenomena collectively is impressive. It makes sense to me, even now as an idealist, to say that mental processes could lead to something like that happening, because here's the metaphysics again. If reality is not fundamentally physical, then the table that they levitate is not something physical being affected by something separate that's mental. And how does the mental stuff make the physical thing move? Well, the physical thing is only physical to our perception. It's not fundamentally physical. It's just how it's represented to us when we use our senses to perceive it, right? And people will say solid objects are mostly empty space if you drill down. So now it's mental stuff mixing with mental stuff. So table levitation, okay. I'm not opposed to that. I see that. Here's where I was going with it. All these highly educated people, and I go, that would be so cool to see that. Somebody manifested, or these group of people manifested contact. They got the name Phillips stuck. With the entity took the name on or whatever. Things were levitated. Somebody must have the video. You must be able to see it. No, there's no video. There's no film capture of it. You know why? Because when they did it that time, they didn't have cameras that were able to capture it in the low light setting that they had themed for the mood. So you've got PhDs, masters, engineers, or whoever else was involved with that thing, who couldn't figure out either to get night vision cameras, meaningful and profound as that. They didn't get the cameras. And if they couldn't afford it, turn on a freaking light. Are you kidding? You're creating phenomena through mentation, through a group city, through a collective conscious, like cognitive little neighborhood created, and you couldn't capture it because it was too dark? I don't know that the average paranormalist running around in black t-shirts, ghost hunting, wouldn't have figured out to either have IR cameras or to turn on a light if they were attempting to do something they wanted to capture. But these guys didn't do it. That's my takeaway from the Philip experiment. To me, it is a classic example, not just of psi phenomena, but of the fact that even people who have high extensive educations and degrees and that validity coming from universities or whatever else can still make a major mulligan needing moment by not capturing visual phenomena because it was too dark and the cameras weren't able to acclimate to the light.
Sounds like a hoax to me.
I mean, I believe that it happened. I believe that they did it, but it's crazy to me that the only reason that there's no visual evidence of what happened was because they didn't have cameras that could shoot in the dark and they didn't turn on a light.
I mean, to me, it sounds like they worked on this for a while and they just need something to validate, and they just kind of made up the story.
Well, I can't say it's not true.
Yeah, I mean, either can I. I can't say it's not true or true, but that's paranormal for you all around.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
that's the other.
The Fox sisters got, that's a whole story too. But
yeah,
they came out and said it was fake. Everything they were doing it for money, fame, and that's what everybody does now on TikTok and all that BS.
Yeah, and then one of them recanted that though, and admitted that they were paid to she took money to say that it was hoaxed. So it's really muddy to know what truly happened. But
yeah,
I don't know.
I don't know. When you're talking about like what your mind sees and everything, I just pictured a Matrix. That kid with the spoon. Like, you can't bend the spoon. That's impossible. You just got to realize the spoon's not there. And that's when it bends. Is that what you're trying to like?
Almost, yeah. So almost. So the thing under idealism, it's not to say the spoon isn't there. It's to say that it's not fundamentally physical.
Okay.
Our senses perceive things as physical, but they're not fundamentally physical. Under idealism, reality is consciousness or mental processes. Everything is a mental process. So we see the world and it appears to us as physical, but it's not fundamentally physical. So there is technically no spoon, but something out there is represented to us as the spoon.
Yeah.
So you have mental stuff mixing with mental stuff, and then affecting it does not require the same grandiose explanation as some solid metal thing being affected by this other stuff. That's part of the view of reality that the world's held for so long. Comes from Descartes or Cartesian dualism, which says that you can explain everything in reality by two things: by mind stuff, and matter. Mind and matter. It explains everything. They're both separate. These are two incommensurable things that are not gelling, separate. But those two things can explain everything. But the problem with that is that is in philosophy what we call internally. It's an internal contradiction, because it says mind and matter are separate. But then what does it do? It tries to explain mind in terms of matter by saying that physical matter, the squishy stuff in your head, is creating your consciousness, which is your mind. So these are separate things, but then one of them's creating the other one. It's a contradiction.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Anybody else have any questions? Go ahead and throw them out there. We'll get to them. Yeah. Donna said, like, you can't see wind, but we know what it is.
Right. And that's important, right? That's a great example, because we can measure some things. So people go, well, you can measure all these different things, right? Like, because qualitative states, that's one of the reasons why, like, for example, when I explain stone tape theory or psychometry, the idea that an experiential state like love or despair gets stored in the wood, the Victorian crown molding, or in the rocks or the crystals, and then those things, for reasons no one's ever explained, get released, and then people or mediums pick up on it when they show up. You're appealing to the court of physics. You're saying that wood, a physical thing, holds on to something that's another type of thing, which is mental stuff, which is something experiential, like let's say despair. Somebody gets killed somewhere, they have this feeling of despair, and then they exude the despair, and then it gets stuck in the wood, and it's there forever or however long, and then people come in, and mediums either touch it through psychometry or just sense it being in the room, and then they get the whole, no. Now, I've seen mediums do stuff like that, and I don't deny the experience of what they do. What I deny is that the wood is holding on to experiential states. Why? Why do I deny that? Because now you're playing in the court of physics. You're saying there's physical stuff and there's mental stuff, right? We're back to dualism. And we're saying that this physical wood is holding on to this emotional state, this experiential state called despair. So if you look at the wood down to a molecular level, based on that explanation that's been circulating for stone tape for years, you should be able to see discrete little boundaries, little molecules of wood that make up the wood, and mixed in there, you should see molecules of despair. If you can't, it's an appeal to magic. Then how do you know it's there? Because it's convenient, because somebody felt it? You can't say it's holding it. Appeal to physics by saying wood is holding on to something emotional and then not show it. Why can't you show it? That's the big question. Because you can't quantify a qualitative state. You can't measure a qualitative state. And it's all asked when we talk, we do talks. How much does my love weigh? What is the length of my thoughts? What is the breadth and speed of my hunger? These are all experiential states, but you can't measure them. And if you can't measure them, then go back to what I said earlier. Physicality is a result of observation and measurement. If we can't observe and measure despair in the wood, then we can't know it's there. Whole theory falls apart. Now, if the house is perceived to us through our physical senses as physical, through our eyes, our ocular systems is physical, but it's not fundamentally physical. It's a mental state that we perceive as physical. And then there's emotions that happen like despair in that place at a certain time. Now you have mental stuff mixing with emotional stuff. Do we ever see that? Every day. Our emotions and thoughts intermingle and influence each other. Now you have an explanation for when a medium walks in or touches something and experiences and feels what happened there and then nails it. Now you have an explanation for it that doesn't clash with science, because you're not saying a physical thing like wood or crystals is holding on to an experience like love or despair that you can't show. You're saying that these are both mental states and that or emotional and mental, and one is influencing the other. Can those things be grouped together like in a memory? Absolutely. When you reflect on your first car and you're driving along the coast and the top's down and the car was blue and you were listening to this music and this song and you feel the wind in your hair and you remember thinking about whoever, that's all part of what we call a cognitive neighborhood. Those are all thoughts that are grouped by association, and then you hold that as part of a memory. So if reality is consciousness, if consciousness is the basis for reality, then you can have that cognitive neighborhood, which is the thing that somebody was killed and the whole experience and the despair that happened at that location. The place and everything that happened, it can be part of a collective thought of associations that are grouped, and then the medium experiences that, because the medium is also not fundamentally physical, right? And so that's, I should have mentioned maybe earlier, under idealism, there's one universal consciousness that is reality. And then the knock to every metaphysical position has a criticism. Idealism is if there's one mind, how do you explain all of us? If reality is one universal mind, one universal consciousness. And the answer to what could explain it, per Dr. Bernardo Kastrup, is dissociation, which used to be called multiple personality or dissociative identity disorder, which people can have. And it's one mind that fragments into multiple centers of subjectivity or multiple centers of identity. And if they're ever cured of it, then they have and assimilate all those memories and experiences that they had in the different personalities. We're not saying that the universe has a pathology and we need to cure it. But we're saying that, is there an example in nature where a mind, one mind, can fragment into individuated centers of identity? And there is. That's an instance of it. So you can extrapolate, at least to theorize or hypothesize, that with reality being mental, that we're all separate through dissociation. So we're still not fundamentally physical, but we appear physical to each other. That's what our dissociations look like. So now you have a medium who's not fundamentally physical, at a location, who's picking up on these feelings or things that happen there that are grouped by association as part of like one collective memory. And then they do a reading on it. But it's not because love is stored in the wood.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. I mean,
It's just an alternate way to explain it without, I'm not, like I said, I'm not saying these experiences don't happen, but I'm trying to make a case for how, if it's even plausible.
Yeah.
Right.
I
Because
understand that.
the whole conversation about the portals and stuff before, when people go, oh, there's a portal over there and there's 13 of them. And then that becomes the thing, right? When you can't prove it's not true, then it gets taken to be true. But it's not just because we can't prove these things, especially since these are subjective experiences. But it's not about you can or can't prove something, right? It's about, do we have any reason to believe it or lean into it?
Right.
Right? Like you could say, this is one of my favorite examples that Dr. Casper used. You could say that all the forces of gravity and dark matter and everything else out in the universe is not why the planets are doing what they do and why they're where they are. You could say that what really happens is that there's a big flying spaghetti monster, and he moves and spins the planets with his noodly appendages, and that's what's happening. And you go, well, Ron, that's ridiculous. I don't believe you. That's not true. And I go, prove it.
Yeah.
You can't. But just because you can't prove it doesn't mean you can't disprove it, doesn't mean that it's true. So proving or not proving something is not the goal. The goal is, if we're going to say that there's a portal to another world there, we're going to say that there's another dimension here or whatever, do we have any reason to lean into that, to believe it, to speak to it? Any reason. You could infer it. Doesn't mean you have to have a picture of it necessarily, right? Dark matter was never measured. It was inferred by the fact that after the Big Bang, the expansion and speed of the cosmos growing is faster. There's a quickening. And per what we know in physics, any explosion, the greatest amount of speed and velocity would happen close to and near the explosion. And then the further out and longer it went, the more it would slow down. But that's not what we see. So there's something that must be causing that, hence the inference of dark matter. So something. But we can't just say, well, there's a portal to another dimension over there, and that's where the ghosts come in and out, and then have nothing to support it, except that we need it right now. I need to explain that I've recorded a voice and somebody got a picture over there, and the SLS camera showed a stick figure. I need something, so there's a portal there. No.
I mean, that goes way beyond portals and everything else. And I mentioned this before in my other podcast is, I'm sick of these investigators, and they could be, I can't prove or disprove it, but they go into this place and they say, Kathy, there's a spirit named Kathy here. The next thing you know, it's in all the books that the spirit Kathy's here because one person said it. And I'm a big believer, the main reason I do this and go out and do investigation is to keep memories alive. Because we're all scared to be forgotten. I mean, that's the gist of it. There's things that, are true. You live, you die. And everybody's scared to be forgotten. So I try to keep memories alive. But when one person says Kathy's here, what if that's not Kathy over there? And everybody's calling her Kathy, and it's some dude named Frank. He's going to get mad. Or he's going to be like, I'll be Kathy for tonight. Who cares? Just talk to me.
Right.
So, I mean, there's so many people out there that I think we're just jumping to conclusions.
Well, we are in some instances. It's funny. So I'll give you a small preview in book 6 that I'm writing now, which is on metaphysics and paranormality. One of the things I'm writing, the one chapter I'm actually just finished working on, it's a fusion of two different ideas. It's the idea of spirits being trapped or stuck. And it really came largely out of a discussion that I had here with Lourdes. And she put forth an explanation of what being stuck could make sense as, unlike the way it's explained now, which is again, the analytic idealism influence on her mindset because she's seeing things through a different lens. That was part of it. And then one of the other things I put in there too was that there are certain things that are a part of historical record or documented, that this is the Smith family farm, and we know that that Joel and Joanna Smith built the farm in 1720. And there's stuff that's documented that you can pretty much say, okay, this happened. This is the history, right? And then there's what I call, so this is the first time I'm saying this publicly, but it's in the book, what I call the paranormal B plot. If like in movies, they'll have a main storyline, and then there's like a secondary character that has like maybe a character arc where they grow and whatever, and that's like the B plot that's happening alongside the main storyline. So we create the paranormal B plot, and we go, not only is Joel's spirit here, but after he impregnated the slave, and the family and everybody turned on him and then killed him, that now he traps their spirit and he doesn't let them leave, and he doesn't like when women are in his study. We have no way to know that. It's a whole narrative. And maybe some of it comes from a medium who says that that's what they're picking up on, and then maybe it's true. But we create a lot of the paranormal B plot for stuff. And I think that's kind of what you're speaking to.
Yeah.
With that.
It definitely it bothers me a lot, but that's just me. Let's get off the other stuff. So, I mean, we're almost hour 30 minutes into this. Your books. Yeah.
They are.
Where are they available on your website?
I have links on the website, which I appreciate you putting on the bottom. GonYac Paranormal. That unusual name comes from Lourdes' last name, Gonzalez, and mine, Yacovetti. She came up with that as a little email prefix because she says she GonYac, meaning she's with me. But I've had people say, why don't you have your name first? Why isn't it Yak Gon? I said, because that sounds like a bug repellent, and nobody wants that. So on the website, there's a link. I made some of the courses that I put out. I made them free if you click on it. I had them hosted on a source for payment for a while, which did pretty well, but I wanted to get more circulation on them than even that. So on the top of our website, there's a link to click to the courses. It takes it to a secondary. I created a YouTube list where the courses are, plus a few clips of me at a lecture that I had done. There's a link to events tab, and there's testimonials of people who have had very profound experiences through the digital seance when we take it out in the public, which when we take it out in the public, it is not about us. It is about hopefully giving these people these meaningful experiences of stuff that we couldn't possibly know, but it matters to them. And there's a link to Amazon where all the books are, the 5 that are there now. They chronicle pretty closely my journey into this. The first one starts with how I got into this stuff and my fascination with direct radio voice and spirit communication stuff. The second one's a little bit more methodological with ITC and the whole, it's called ITC Technomancy, the magical world of spirit communication. The first one's called Paranormally Speaking, Knowingly Talking to the Unknown. The third one is the Digital Séance Initiative. Again, I came up with that name for the book and then used that name for the live public events. So should that name appear anywhere else, it is somebody lifting it for their own use for whatever reason. That book, the Digital Séance Initiative, has a lot of some exposition and some stuff about, I guess, the way the method works maybe and stuff, but it has some moments of some of the people's profound experiences they had with us. The fourth one is where it gets a little bit more academic and a little bit more into the metaphysics stuff, which is called Paranormalization, Memoirs of an Academic Layperson, which is kind of like the middle ground that I'm trying to occupy. I do want to get a master's soon in the philosophy because I've been doing the work that deserves it, to be honest, for a number of years now. But I would still consider myself, categorically, if I had to give myself status, a layperson, however educated I may or may not be. And I think that the academic layperson is the person who takes the academics and the educational part very serious and takes it to the max. even if they don't have the accredited university paper behind it. I think that's an area that needs to get more crowded for us. So I always hope through what we do, we bridge that gap. The fifth book, the newest one that came out, is Afterlife Contact, A New Perspective. And that's when I start looking at things and explaining things, like I said, with stone tape and even the spirit communication from a different perspective that is through the lens of an idealist. The reality is fundamentally mental element of it. And I know it's a very hard concept to just adopt. It took me a while to do it, reading a lot of stuff and kind of like looking at it. But then I had the aha moment where, if you don't know if you know Sam Baltrusis, who's a very good medium, a very good author, and he asked me to answer a couple questions for one of his books, and the fifth one was on stone tape. And that's where the academic essay I wrote and then the lecture I did on that at the Paranormal Research Symposium in Gettysburg last year came from, because I started to answer the stone tape question the way I always would have answered it, the way anybody would have answered it. And I got into it and I went, no, that doesn't make sense. And that's when the way I explained it before, and that's when it hit me. And now I remain open-minded. I listen to different perspectives, different metaphysical positions. But unless something resonates as sensible, coherent, and it seems to not conflict with science and it gels, then for the most part, I see things through this idealist lens, which is consciousness is the foundation from which we explain all else. So that the fifth book, Afterlife Contact, A New Perspective, is the first one, even more than the one before it, that gets into that a lot more. Book 6, which is a little more than halfway done, is going to challenge even more things, like I did with psychometry, residual haunting, and stone tape. Book 6, I will speak on some other theories and hypotheses that are floating out there in the paranormal and point out, where I'm in agreement and where I perhaps see that metaphysically it doesn't seem to hold up. So, but they are all available on Amazon. And I always tell people, if you enjoy it, any of them, a great review is always appreciated. If you don't enjoy it, it makes excellent kindling. You can throw it in the fireplace when it gets cold. As long as you read it.
As long as you read it. No, I mean, the one thing I like about you is, though, even though you might not agree with it, but you're still open to someone disproving you. I mean, that's what we need to be. You can't just be yes or no. Like, there's so many people out there, even not just paranormal, just in life. This is the way it is. Nothing's going to change my mind.
Right.
But you're open to that. You want that challenge. Like, prove me wrong.
And the thing is that, to kind of harken back a moment, like, I don't think I can be proven wrong, and I don't think I can be proven right. Yeah. I think that what I say either resonates and makes sense, or it'll percolate for a little while, and maybe later on you'll have a moment too, like the aha moment I had, and be like, oh, wait a minute, now what he said, now I see with this. So it may have a moment. When Lourdes and I do these talks and we have these moments, we never are coming from a place of, we figured it out, we know what's going on better than you, so listen up, kids. No, that's not ever where we're coming from. We're looking at not conflicting with science, not jumping from one metaphysical position to another, not making up things for the purposes of having a narrative or a theory about something, or a hypothesis about something. And we're listening to people who are highly educated, who do have a good handle on physical realism and physics and quantum field theory and consciousness and metaphysical philosophy and neuroscience. And like, I'm listening to and reading a lot of these different things to sway wherever it is I am now as an idealist, as far as that position goes. But never are we saying we figured out and we're right. What we hope happens when we talk and when we share all this stuff that I babbled about and everything before, we hope that it makes people think. Yeah. Right? So when I get misidentified as a skeptic, no, I'm not denying the experience. I'm challenging the explanation, because in order to have the experience gain validity, the explanation has to hold up. So I appreciate you saying that. That's really, I'm open to new ideas. And if by being wrong, someone's input makes me rethink what I felt to be the case or to be true, yeah, I'm all for that. I'm all for that. Um, I think that's another instance of being familiar with not only what your metaphysical position might be, but what it means. Because I have had ideas put out there that and I thought about it. There's a couple that have to do with cryptids and UAP things. There's a couple of popular hypotheses out there, and it's very appealing. There's almost a romanticized appeal, like, oh wow, this is cool, okay. But then I think it through, and then the implications for what metaphysical position it speaks to, if it ends up under materialism, that everything is just physical and there's no qualities out there, if it ends up there, then that's where I may abandon the idea. But I'll always entertain it. We don't know anything more than anybody else here. We're trying to take an approach that will support ideas, not just our own, but support ideas and maybe get the field thinking a little bit more about how they can explain and support what it is they do. Because everybody who does this and puts forth any kind of evidence, if they truly believe it's legit and something, wants to be validated, wants to be credited. Like, damn, that's good. We want that.
No, I mean, I appreciate it. I mean, as every podcast I do, I come away with more questions and answers and, rethinking my theories of what paranormal is. And this podcast here has me mind blown right now. So I'm sure I'll be up late tonight thinking about it, which I appreciate because, again, we have to grow. You have to have an open mind. If you don't, there's no reason to be in this field besides for fun. But again, sorry, Lourdes couldn't be on. We're an hour and 40 minutes into this. Love to have you two back on again. We talked a lot about a lot of stuff here, but I'd like to get into like some of your paranormal experiences. Obviously not tonight because we'll be on for 3 more hours. But all your events are on your website. Because I mean, if you're close by, I'm coming. I mean, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. They're all the events. I try to keep it current. The main thing that usually makes it easy for me when we do any kind of event, whether we're the headline thing for the event or we're just part of it, if they make those posters, the little images, then I try to slap them on the website right away and put them in the order that they go. So where is it you're located out of?
East of Cleveland.
Okay. Well, we were out in Ohio a couple times last year. We were working with J.W. Prather for his Project WorldGate stuff. So we were in Felicity, Ohio, and then we were in what was the name of the other place? I can't think of it. Yeah, Defiance.
Okay.
Defiance, Ohio. We were there twice.
Okay. Yeah, I'll keep an eye on that. Definitely, I'm interested, especially with your. I'm terrible with stuff, but your radio.
The Digital Séance?
Yeah, the Digital Séance and the radio that you use. Because like I said before, like last week I was thinking that, why do I have to switch channels? I don't understand.
Yeah.
So
right. Well, important too to point out, just and not to nitpick, but it's so important because it's a big thing that we changed. There is no radio involved anymore. We're using analog generators that make the white noise without radio reception. We started out using a radio on a vacant shortwave channel for the white noise initially. But then when we realized we didn't need radio reception, we went, well, if we could make part of the process what would be akin to using a Faraday cage, which is to divert radio signals away from reception. So that's what we did. So we're using analog generators that go into an interface that fuses multiple generators into one channel. That goes through the software where we filter and slow down the noise. So there is no radio, which is vital, again, to point out, because when we're getting voices without data, white noise having no data and no radio reception, it makes it a lot harder to explain it away when a room full of people hear a response or a voice.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. I'm gonna look into
And we'd
that.
love to have you. We'd love to have you at one.
Yeah, I mean, trust me, if you're close by, I'm coming. So you might see me in the background. You know, that's good.
Yeah, be great.
Again, I mean, once your new book comes out or whatever Lourdes feels like up to it, I'd like to have you back on a show. You know, get her on and some experiences. Do have some questions for her, especially being from the Caribbean, because I have a few friends there from down there, and their paranormal is they believe in it, but they're not allowed to. You know,
Uh,
it was kind of looked down upon, you know, growing up, and that's what I've heard. So I haven't been
yeah.
down there, but no, a lot of questions. But I cut this. Yeah, I try to keep it an hour. We're hour 40 minutes in. But again, I appreciate you coming on. Appreciate you reaching out, and we'll keep going down that rabbit hole and see where it leads.
No, I appreciate it too. Yeah, I'd love to come back. She has great stories to tell from her family history, and they believed in it. They practiced it. Most of them, not all of them, but a lot of them. She has a few different experiences, even close to present day, with the out of body kind of stuff, as to the way to describe it, I guess. So she would add another vertical to make it worth having us come back on. And her take and her position on stuck spirits and idealism too is also pretty interesting
Oh yeah,
to dive
definitely.
into.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, again, I appreciate it. We're gonna cut this. It's not short. Cut this long, but again, keep in touch, and hopefully, I'll see you guys soon.
Absolutely. Anything we can do. And I want to encourage everybody watching your show to continue supporting shows like this to give people like us an opportunity to come on and talk. And the variety of different people that you have on. I think it's important for those of us who give us a voice like you. We're grateful. So thank you for having me and slash us when we can when we can do it.
No problem. Keep doing what you're doing, and I'll talk to you soon.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.